Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Or if you happen to be a new visitor here or just a visitor that hasn't subscribed yet, please click away at that big subscribe button to stay up to date and current with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. Today we're talking about episode 4 of Star Trek Discovery season 4 entitled All Is Possible. We had a lot going on in this episode. We had political goings on with Saru and Burnham on Navarre. We had Tilly and the cadets on the away mission on the inhospitable planet with creatures trying to kill them left, right and centre. We had Book and Culber doing counselling sessions back on Discovery. It was a good mix of stuff, and I felt like it was a better episode than the previous week's episode. That sort of stuff that I felt a little bit about too much going on. I think they struck a better balance in this episode. So let's take a look at episode 4 and see what it had to offer. So this episode started with a captain's log and a star date, which I can't remember the last time we had a Star Trek Discovery episode starting with a captain's log and a star date. Certainly felt, it almost surprised me. I was like, oh, this sounds like Star Trek I'm watching. So I thought that was really good to get that. We don't tend to get the typical captain's log opening much recently. We tended to get it, almost every episode for Next Generation and the original series and Voyager and so forth, where you kind of got into the episode with the captain's log. So I think that was a really nice opening and also a good summary for people who are just catching up on stuff that's happened in the previous episodes to just give us a bit of a refresher about what's happening in the world of the Discovery. And next we get a scene with Tilly and Dr. Culber where he kind of urges her to take this assignment of cadets off to do a bit of a training mission. Tilly's clearly feeling a little bit out of place, not quite sure where she best fits, and there's a little bit of crisis of conscience there. So Culber recommends this to get her thoughts a little bit more clearer in her head. Next we get a scene with Adira and Gray, and the whole Adira and Gray dynamic, I think it's played out, and now I'm kind of just getting irritated by the dynamics between these two characters. There are so many other characters on board the Discovery I want to see. I want to see more about Reese and Bryce, Oo, Detmer, Nilsson, Linus, Reno. There are so many interesting characters and we barely know them. I think now that Gray's got his body, let him go off back to Trill and become a Guardian and let's wave goodbye to Gray. I really want to see other characters given more screen time. If I was the actors who portray the roles of Oo, Detmer, Reese, Bryce, Linus, Reno, Nilsson, you name them, I'd be quite insulted that I've been on the show for 4 years and their characters have so little development. We don't know these characters as an audience, and still Adira and Gray keep getting all this limelight and all this airtime. Need to be pushed aside to get some of our bridge crew a bit of limelight for once. Next we have our scene with Kovich and Tilly and Adira with the cadets prepping for their training mission. Good to see Kovich. I think he's always an interesting personality when he gets involved in Starfleet business, and it's a nice parallel that he makes in terms of the various cadets at Starfleet having trouble getting out there, interacting with each other. There's everyone's a bit standoffish, which very, very nicely mirrors our current world with COVID and people struggling to come out of lockdown and get back to being fully social again when we've all sort of been a bit socially distant over the last couple of years. The Tilly awkwardness on the shuttle briefing the cadets. It's always interesting to see Tilly do her rambly sort of foot in mouth stuff. I think she's always a character that adds a good amount of humour and levity to the show. It's always a highlight and it's always a nice breath of fresh air to get the bubbliness, the levity and the humour from Tilly's character. And we also get to meet our Starfleet cadets in a bit more of a personal way. Cadet Haral, the Orion, Sasha, the human, and Gorev, the Tellarite. And there's obviously a little bit of bad blood between the Tellarite and the Orion because the Tellarite's family had run-ins with the Emerald Chain, and there's a bit of animosity there. Meanwhile, on Navarre, we've got the summit going on where the Navarrans are looking to rejoin the Federation, but it comes with some terms. Obviously, Tarina and the Navarrans are sort of a bit standoffish. They've sort of felt in the past the Federation didn't really look after them as best they could have. Therefore, they're not really wanting to come back to the Federation without some sort of exit clause to get out of things if things aren't going the way they want. And it all seems a bit of a setup in terms of the Saru-Burnham presence at this summit. They've been dragged there particularly to stir things up because the Federation President Rillick doesn't want to budge, Tarina doesn't want to budge, there's political, I can't be seen to be caving, I need to remain strong, and it's the job of Burnham and Saru to find a healthy compromise between the various arguments that are going down. It's nice to see an interaction again with Tarina and Saru. I think last season we had a few nice little scenes between those two characters, and it seems like that connection that they made on Discovery is certainly growing. We've got Tarina buying Saru, well not buying, but giving Saru Kelpian tea, which he appreciates. We've got these guys meditating together. It's like a little bit of a first date scenario going on here between Saru and Tarina. There's definitely, a little bit of a connection there between these two, it would seem. Meanwhile, back on Discovery, we've got Culber and Book doing therapy sessions, with Book trying to use programmable matter to make a sand sculpture, one of those, fancy meditative kind of sand paintings, and that when they're finished, they're swept away and everything. It's to try to get Book's headspace right again. So even though he had the mind meld with Tarina in last week's episode, it was a kind of a bit of a band-aid solution. Book's grief is very, very deep. The loss of his planet and family has been, very crippling for him, and just one simple mind meld isn't quite enough to blow the depression aside. So he's looking to find some other techniques to help him. It was a fine dynamic between these two. I wouldn't say it's riveting television. I'm not sure how many more episodes we need, to be quite honest, with him grieving and, being depressed. Obviously, it's a great tragedy that's happened to him. But at the same time, for the sake of television and entertainment and progressing the story forward and moving more onto the solving of the whole DMA issue, I think we kind of need to just let Book sort himself out from now on and not worry about his grief so much. Also at the summit on Navarre, there's a little bit more of an understanding, I think, going down now between Burnham and Rillick. During the whole summit, we had a lot of pairings off. Saru trying to, talk Tarina around. We had Burnham try to talk Rillick around. And it seems like even though that the dynamic between Rillick and Burnham was a bit antagonistic initially, I think there's a growing understanding and a growing respect, particularly I think from Rillick's point of view towards Burnham. Meanwhile, back on the planet, we've got the shuttle crew trying to get to the top of the mountain to send the message to the Federation starship to rescue them, but they can't use any technology because using technology alerts the various different creatures that are roaming the icy wastes on this world to come and eat them. We've got Adira getting stuck in ice and they can't phase her free. They have to use a makeshift sort of rope. It's interesting to get the backstory stuff going on between the Orion and the Tellurite. The Orions seem to have now become the Klingons or the Romulans of Star Trek in Discovery, in the sense that the whole Emerald Chain situation had them as the big baddies, and there's obviously that Emerald Chain obviously pissed off a lot of people. That is filtering down to the cadets, where there's antagonism and everything there between them. I thought the scene with Saru and Tarina meditating, everything was quite lovely. Hopefully they give us a little bit more of this Saru and Tarina on their first date kind of thing. It's not a first date, but it sort of is a first date. There's sort of a few little moments where they're having these little connections with each other. So it'd be interesting to see where that story thread leads us. Obviously, the whole summit situation has to end in a compromise because neither the Federation nor Navarre will fully kind of cave in. So the whole purpose of Burnham and Saru being there is just to find that compromise in the situation. A few quite nice analogies are made in terms of getting them to understand that working together is far more beneficial than working apart. And Saru gives the example of the Kelpians and the Baul on his homeworld, how they used to be antagonistic and work separately, and now they've joined up and they're working together, and it's much more advantageous for both species. Same way as the Vulcans and the Romulans used to be antagonistic, but have now unified on the one world and everything as well. And even Burnham made the observation of Rillak's heritage, being both Cardassian and Bajoran. So obviously those worlds were, previously at war, and now, Rillak is the embodiment of two races that previously at odds ended up working together to, to make Rillak. The whole solution to the problem saying, Burnham saying, I am going to be the one to fix it. I will be the council, and because I know Vulcan, I grew up on Vulcan, and I also know the Federation, so I'm the best person to oversee this independent council to make sure everyone's doing the right thing. It was fine, I suppose, but we are definitely chalking up a lot of situations where Burnham has to be the magical savior of the galaxy, and she always has to be the control freak that, is the one that saves everybody and solves every situation, and there's no other captains in all of Starfleet or all the Federation that can do it. It has to be always Burnham because Burnham is so amazing. That at least in this context, she has had that background of growing up on Vulcan and being part of Starfleet and Federation. It just seems like we're getting a lot of solutions to problems in Discovery where Burnham is the Deus Ex Machina, which, the solution where one magical person, solves everyone's problems all the time. And I guess she is, in this case, qualified for it. The scene with the shuttle crew getting to the top of the mountain and escaping the creature. Interesting that Tilly put her hand up to be the one that got chased by the creature while the others made the phone call to the Federation starship in orbit to get rescued. I would have thought surely the person who could run the fastest would be the best choice for the proverbial bait. Tilly didn't want to put any of the cadets in danger, and she wanted to put herself in danger and not risk the lives of others, which is obviously very noble of her to do that. Good on her for being courageous and taking a bullet for the team, so to speak. But they managed to contact the ship and get out of there just before she got eaten by the giant, starfish worm creature thing that was chasing them all. Great to see Navarre rejoining the Federation. I think that was, a nice ending to this, and it's good to see that the Federation is now slowly gaining more member worlds and everything. And, Vulcan being one of the founding members of the original Federation, I think the Federation is not the same without Vulcan or Navarre in the case that it is now back in the Federation again. And the ending of this episode took us a very surprising twist. Obviously, we get Tilly offered the job by Kovich to be a teacher at Starfleet Academy. This really came out of nowhere for me. I had no idea the character of Tilly was leaving the Discovery. It's a bit of a bizarre choice. Tilly was the one character that offered levity and humour amongst all of the somewhat mopey emotional stuff all the time. I think we get a lot of emotional scenes on the Discovery, and Tilly was always a breath of fresh air with the levity and the humour and that sort of foot-in-mouth awkwardness that kind of always brought a smile to your face. A great character in that regard. So the fact that she's now left and gone to be a Starfleet Academy lecturer, I think, where are we going to go now with Discovery? I don't really think these creative choices that are being made recently are going to do the show any favours. I really want it to be good, and I really hope we get some really good stories in the remainder of the season. It was a nice touch, though, at the end of this episode when we see the little snow globe that Tilly had in her quarters, which is labelled All Is Possible on the snow globe. It's got a little NX-01 Archer's Enterprise in the snow globe. I thought that was a cute little reference, going back, way back to the beginnings of Starfleet and the Federation. Guys, let me know what you thought of this episode, All Is Possible, Episode 4, Discovery Season 4. Let me know whether you liked this episode. Did you like the dynamics of what went down on Navarre with all the political stuff? Did you like the dynamics of what happened with Tilly and the cadets escaping from the monsters and everything on the ice world? What did you think of Culber and Book having their therapy session? And what your thoughts are on Tilly leaving the Discovery to go and be a lecturer at Starfleet Academy. Guys, as always, leave a super thanks if you're able to. It really helps the channel out, much appreciated. If not, leave a like and a comment, share this video with your friends, and also, subscribe if you haven't already done so. Merch, as always, in the merch store. Great Star Trek flavoured t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, everything like that. Grab something just before Christmas for your friends and family. And I will see you guys very, very soon for my next video. I'll see you soon.